To keep yourself updated, subscribe to Indigo Learn and click the bell icon and download our app OneFin to start learning on the go.
Hello everyone. Let's start with paper 2 in your CA Foundation course, and the name of the subject is Business Laws and Business Correspondence and Reporting. This paper is divided into two parts. Part A, which is Business Laws, which comprises of 60 marks, and Part B, which is Business Correspondence and Reporting, which comprises the remaining 40 marks. With me, you are going to study different business laws which are the part of your syllabus. Now, before we embark on our journey of learning different business laws, let's understand what is law and why is law important. Whenever we start with a new subject, it is important for us to know what is the meaning of that subject. What are the things we are going to study in this subject? So before we start our journey of learning different set of business laws which are a part of your foundation syllabus, let's first understand what is law and why is law important. But before we understand what is law and why is law important, let me introduce myself to you. I am Ashlesha, and with me you are going to study part A of your paper 2, that is business laws. And apart from it, one more interesting thing which you should know about this subject law, and that is this subject will be there at all the 3 levels of your CA course. It is there at the foundation level. When you go to the CA intermediate level, there also you have the subject law, and at the final level as well, you have the subject law, which means the base of law has to be made strong from foundation itself. And don't worry, we will do it together. We will understand the subject practically and with a lot of examples. Let's now embark on our journey of learning a new subject, and that is law. So law is a subject which is new to everyone. Accounting, maths, these are some subjects which you might have studied in your class 11th and 12th. But law is something which is very new to you. Now, before we look into the topics, let's first understand what is law and why is law important. Let's understand this with help of few real life situations. Now say, in very ancient eras, there were no vehicles. What was used? People either walked for miles together to travel to different places, or early human beings, the only means of transport they had is their own legs and nothing else. After that came into existence bullock carts and horse carriages, and these other different means were developed. Now these horse carriages and bullock cart also, they were not machineries, they were run by animals. And after ages, there was development of bicycle. After bicycle came a 2-wheeler, then a 4-wheeler, and now we are living in an era where we have 2-wheelers, 4-wheelers, auto rickshaw and different types of vehicles for our transportation. So, in ancient times, do you think there was need of any traffic rules and regulations? There was no need of traffic rules and regulations. If a person is walking on the road, he knows how to walk. He will look at different sides. He will look if someone is coming from front and he'll move aside to give way to that person. So when you're walking, it is very simple. You do not need any traffic rules or regulations. And also when there was the era of horse carriages and bullock cart, at that time as well, there was no need of any traffic rules and regulations because these were managed manually by the people. There was no machinery which was involved. But when these vehicles came into existence, there was a need of the traffic rules and regulations, because if there are no traffic rules and regulations, what will happen? A car comes from this side, the other car comes from this side, and then accident. So if there were no traffic rules and regulations in place, then people would not know when to stop on a signal, when to start or when to slow down. There wouldn't be anything. And people would drive freely on the roads as they like. without any rules and regulations in place, there would be many accidents, a lot of chaos on the roads. Now, the lawmakers, they thought there is a problem which we have. If we do not have rules and regulations for this, there will be many accidents happening. Because if people do not know that they have to wear a seat belt, they have to wear a helmet, and they have to stop on the red signal, people will not follow any of these. And if there are no rules, there would be many accidents as well. So the lawmakers, they thought and they made a list of all the rules which have to be followed by people who are driving the vehicles. Now, we all know that if we do not wear a helmet, we will be fined. We also know if we jump a red signal, there is a fine for that. Which means lawmakers have made rules and regulations, and they have also made consequences of not following the rules and regulations. They've told you that if this is the rule, if you do not follow this rule, you will be punished in the form of a fine. There was a problem, and to solve the problem, a law was made. So what do we understand from this? Law is nothing but a set of rules and regulations which have to be followed by the people to whom the law governs. Yes, so law is nothing but a set of rules and regulations which governs the behavior of people, how people react. It governs people's actions. So whenever we are talking about law, law is nothing but a set of rules and regulations. Let's take a few more examples and understand what is law. So say, you might have you go to a restaurant, and there at the restaurant, you see a 9-year-old small boy serving you there at the restaurant. He's cleaning the tables, and he's picking up the plates on the tables, and he's doing all sorts of work there. And then you see the manager of the restaurant is scolding this small little boy. Now, immediately, what you do is you call the police and inform them that here in this restaurant, they are promoting child labor. They have employed a small kid as a laborer, and they are making him work. Now, in this situation, what is the problem here? The problem here is child labor. A very small kid whose age is right now to go and study, he is made to work. And in order to protect child labor, there was an act which was made, that is Child Labor Act. There is a law which governs child labor as well, which prohibits child labor. So here there was a problem of child labor, and lawmakers, they made rules and regulations regarding child labor as well. Now, apart from this, there are laws for protection of consumers as well. Now say you see different advertisements on television. Now sometimes these advertisements can be very misleading. So in order to protect the interest of the consumers, there are rules and regulations which have been made in order to protect the customer. So you might have heard that there is a code called as the Consumer Code, where if any problem happens with you, if you are cheated upon, you can go to that court and file a case on the person who has cheated you. So in this situation, there was a problem which consumers or customers were facing. So there was a law which was made for the protection of customers. So if you look at different situations, there are different problems which have to be addressed. And in order to take care of those problems, there are different rules and regulations which have been made. These rules and regulations have to be abided by the people. Now, say there might be some rules and regulations at your home as well. That if you're going out, so come home by 9 o'clock or come home by 10 o'clock. So there is a restriction, or rather there's a rule that if you're going out, you have to come home back by 9 or 10, whatever time it is. You have to come back by 9. Or say when you were in college or school, there were different set of rules and regulations in college and school as well. In school, you had to wear the school uniform and you had to dress up neatly and go to the school. And there are n number of rules which you have to follow when you were in the school or in the college as well. And if you did not follow those rules and regulations, what happened? You were punished. When we are talking about rules in a house or rules in a school, they govern only the people staying in that house or the people studying in that school or people who are part of the school. But when we talk about a law, law governs the entire nation. Law is a set of rules and regulations which have to be followed by the people in the society, which governs all the people, all the citizens of a country. If there's a particular law which is applicable to a particular country, then all the people of that country, they'll have to abide that law. Now, when we say there are different traffic rules, so if you're at any place in India, you will have to follow all these traffic rules which are made. So now we know what is law. Law is a set of rules and regulations. Now that we have understand what, let's go to another question, and that is why. Let's now understand why is law important. Law is important in order to maintain discipline amongst the people, so that if there's any conflict which arises amongst the people, there is a solution to that conflict. Now say, if you placed an order, if you go to a grocery shop and do not pay the money to the shopkeeper there. Now the shopkeeper, he should have certain rights against you so that he can recover his money back. If there was no law in place, if there were no rules and regulations which were in place, then the shopkeeper wouldn't have any remedy against you, wouldn't have any right against you. He would not have any legal means of recovering the amount from you. So when we say that there are a set of rules and regulations in existence, they play a pivotal role in governing the behavior of people. And why do we say governing the behavior of people? Because if there are a certain set of rules and regulations in place, people will definitely follow those rules and regulations. Because if they do not follow these rules and regulations, they will have to bear consequences, they will have to bear punishments. So, why is law important? Law is important in order to maintain discipline amongst the people and also manage the behavior of people. It helps reducing the chaos in the society. If there wouldn't have been any rules and regulations, then there would be a lot many conflicts and there wouldn't be any solution to these conflicts. So the law helps us in resolving the conflicts which arise amongst the people. So what is law? It is a set of rules and regulations. Why is law important? Law is important because it helps in maintaining discipline amongst the people. It helps in solving the problem which arises, the conflicts which arises amongst the people. So that is the reason why law is very, very, very important. Now that we have understood what is law and why is law important, let's now understand how is law made. You might have heard this word act, and if you've had a look at your syllabus, there are different acts which you are going to study. Let's now understand what is an act and how is an act made. Now before we understand it, we'll have to go back to school days and recollect a subject named civics which we have studied. In this subject civics, you have studied about the parliament, about different organs of the government. If you recollect something, there are three different bodies. One is the legislative body, the other is an executive body, and then finally there is judiciary. So legislative, executive and judiciary, these are three organs or these are three different bodies of the government. And what are the works which these different bodies of the government do? Let's first start with the functions of legislative authority. This legislative authority is basically the people who are making different legislation. So this is an authority which takes care of drafting different rules and regulations, making different laws. So what is the work of the legislative authority? They are the ones who are drafting the rules and regulations. They are the ones who are making the rules and regulations. So this legislative authority is the law-making organization. Let's understand how does this legislative authority makes different laws. Whenever lawmakers think that a new law has to come into existence, a new law has to be made, so first they make a draft of rules and regulations, which means they make a draft. Now, if I just compare this to a normal real life situations, so whenever you want to send a mail, you'll first make a mail, and if you're not sending it immediately, it gets saved in your draft folder. Or even for that matter, even when you're sending a text message to someone, and if you've not yet written the complete text, then that text message is also saved as a draft. So whenever a new law has to come into existence, the lawmakers, they make a draft set of rules and regulations. We call it a draft because it is not yet finalized. It is not yet finalized, and that is the reason why we call it as a draft. And this draft set of rules and regulations is called as a bill. We call it as a bill. So this is not a normal bill which you get when you purchase different things. This bill is a draft. It is a proposed law, or it is a draft of the rules and regulations. Now what happens with the draft? This bill is put forth in both the houses of parliament. Which are the houses of parliament? Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, or the lower house and the upper house. So this bill has to be passed in both Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha. Now when the bill is introduced in the Lok Sabha, it is not necessary that the bill will be passed immediately. What do we mean by passing of the bill? Passing of the bill basically means when majority people give their assent to the bill. When majority people agree to whatever has been written in the bill. So when this bill is introduced in the Lok Sabha, there are different debates which happen. If at all you've ever happened to see a news channel where they show how the discussions happen in Lok Sabha, there you might have seen that there are many people who are sitting there. Who are the people who sit in the Lok Sabha? They are the members of parliament, people who have been elected by us. So they sit there, may do a lot many discussions on different topics, and there are a lot many debates which happen. And if they want to take any decision require majority people's consent, and only then the decision is taken. So similarly, whenever a bill is introduced in the Lok Sabha, there are a lot of debate which will happen. There would be times where the bill will go back for redrafting purposes. It will be introduced again in the Lok Sabha, and then there will be many discussions which will happen. And then finally, when the Lok Sabha passes, the bill will go to the Rajya Sabha then. Now, members there in the Rajya Sabha, they will have to pass the bill. Again here, by majority, the bill has to be passed. Once both the houses of parliament have passed the bill, this bill will go to the President of India. So what happens? Bill is made, a draft set of rules and regulations, that is a bill, it is made. It is introduced in both the houses of parliament, and once both the houses of parliament pass it, it goes to the President of India. Now when President of India gives his assent to the bill, he signs there on the bill, he gives his confirmation to the bill, that bill becomes an act. So this is the process of making of an act. So what was the process? First, there was a draft which was made, which was a bill. This bill is introduced in both the houses of parliament. Once both the houses of parliament pass this bill goes to the President of India. When President of India gives his assent to it, it becomes an act. So we now know how an act is made. Now we have two words in front of us. One is law and the other is act. Law, like I've told you, it is a set of rules and regulations. And act, there are different acts which have been made for specific purposes. So when we talk about act is also a law, but it is a written form of law which is passed by the parliament. So act is nothing but written form of law which is passed by the parliament. That is an act, and we are going to study different acts at CA Foundation level. Now just to understand what is the difference between law and an act, When we use this word act, we are referring to specific written legislatures which have been made. Could be the Indian Contract Act or the Motor Vehicles Act or the Sale of Goods Act. So all these acts, they are made for specific purposes and they deal with some specific things. But when we use the word law, we are referring to a wide range of things. So an act basically consists of sections, subsections, clauses and subclauses. We'll understand what are section, subsection, clauses and subclauses in a moment. But understand that act is something which consists of different sections. There are subsections, clauses and subclauses. But when we talk about a law not only consists of an act, but it also contains rules and regulations, and it also consists of different case laws. So law is a much wider term than an act. So we now know what is an act and how is an act made. Let's now go to the second organ, and that is the executive authority. So we now know that legislative authority is the law-making organization, and we've also understood that how it is made. The second authority or the second limb is the executive authority. What does this executive authority do? This executive authority is basically the law implementing body. Now, when a law has been made, we will also have to make sure that the implementation of this law is happening properly. So, executive authority is the authority which takes care of implementation of the law. They are the authorities which make sure that the law is implemented. And then finally there's judiciary. Judiciary authority or judicial authority is basically the law protecting organ. And why do we call it as a law protecting organ? In case there is any person who is violating the law, it is the judiciary who will give punishment to that person. Now you might have heard of different types of court: district court, session courts, high court, supreme court. So these are all judiciary authorities, and what do? They are protecting the law. And why do we say that they are protecting the law? Because in case there is a person who violates the law, it is the judiciary who will make sure that the person who has violated the law has been punished. And whenever a case is filed, or whenever there is a case which happens in this high court or supreme court or any judiciary authority, there are different judgments with the judicial authority will give. They'll give the judgment on the basis of what is written in the law. So how will they give judgments? They'll read the law, they'll interpret what does the law want to say, they'll interpret the meaning of what has been stated in the law, and on the basis of that they will give their decisions. Now there are different judgments which have been given by this judiciary, by the judicial authority for different situations, for different cases which have happened. Now these judgments are also something which we are going to study in the form of case laws. So there are different case laws as well which we are going to study, and these case laws are nothing but the cases which were filed and the cases which were fought, and they contain the judgment which the judiciary had given in that particular situation, in that particular circumstance. So there are different case laws as well which we are going to study. Now one thing which you should know about case laws is that whenever we read a case law, the case law will have its name, and there will be names of two parties in the case law. But obviously you will not file a case on yourself. So there are two parties. One is the plaintiff and other is the defendant. Plaintiff is a person who files the case, and defendant is the person who is defending, on whom the case has been filed and who is defending himself. And whenever we look at the name of the case law, the first name in the case law is always of the plaintiff and the second name is of the defendant. So whenever you look at the name of the case law, it is always in plaintiff versus defendant format. So this was one small information regarding a case law. And in simple words, a case law is nothing but a collection of all past legal decisions which have been made. We are also going to look at different case laws when we study different acts in your syllabus. So now that we know what is law, Why is law important? How is it made? What is an act? How is an act made? What are the different organs of the government? What are their functions? We've also discussed what is a case law. Now we know all the basic terms relating to law. Let's now talk about an act. So like I've told you that act is a set of sections, subsections, clauses and subclauses. We'll look at different sections, subsections, clauses and subclauses when we study an act. When we talk about an act, there are different acts which are there in existence. There is an act which governs contracts, there is an act which governs sale of goods. Apart from this, there is an act which governs company form of organization, partnership form of organization, there is a motor vehicle act, and there are n number of acts which are there in existence. Don't worry, we are not going to study all the acts which are there in existence. There are only a few set of acts which we are going to study here at your foundation level. But whenever we are studying an act, one very important thing is interpretation of the act. Now, when we study an act, it is not simple English which is used by lawmakers. There are some terms which are used by the lawmakers, and those terms have an impact on the way we understand the act. And also, different acts define a particular term in different ways. Now, if I just take an example, if I ask you who is a relative, so you will now name hundreds of people who are your relatives. But when we look at a relative from point of view of an act, Companies Act gives a different definition of a relative. The Income Tax Act gives a different definition of relative. Yes, there are different definitions given for different terms which are used. So a relative from the point of view of a company will be different from the point of view of the tax authorities. So the terms which we use in daily life will not have the same meaning when we are using those terms in an act. The act will have a set of definitions of the term. And also remember that it is section 2 of any act which contains definitions of different terms which are used in the act. When we talk about act is divided into different chapters. Just like your syllabus has been divided into different topics, an act is also divided into different chapters. Apart from chapters, there are different schedules as well which form part of the act. Now talking about what is a schedule. So schedule is nothing but, just understand, everything cannot be mentioned in the act, in the sections, in the subsections. So there are some formats which have to be given, there is some additional information which has to be given. So all those additional formats and information form part of the schedules. Schedules are also part of the act, they are not different from the act. It's just that there are different schedules which deal with different things in an act. There may be schedule which gives us different formats, or there may be schedules which gives us different rules as well. So an act is divided in different chapters, it has different schedules, it has different sections, and all these things together comprise an act. And also understand, meaning of different words may differ in different acts. It may be same, but there may be difference as well. And also there are certain different terms which are used in an act. Just to cite a few terms which are used in an act, there's a term which is called as notwithstanding. Now this word notwithstanding means in spite of. Basically says, irrespective of whatever has been written, do this. So notwithstanding means in spite of. Then there are different words such as subject to, which is used. Now subject to, when this word subject to is used, it basically says that with due regard to whatever has been stated, follow this or do this. So notwithstanding is in spite of, irrespective of. Subject to means with due regard to whatever has been stated, this also has to be followed or this also has to be done. And apart from these two words, there are different terms as well which are used in an act. We will look at different terms when we come across them, and we will also understand the meaning of these different terms and how their usage has an impact on the interpretation of the act. We will understand all such things. Now, if we go back to the name of your subject, the name of your subject is business laws. Now, what is business laws? Business laws are basically laws which govern different types of businesses, different business transactions. So, the law which governs business and commerce, different business commercial transactions, those type of laws are business laws. Now that we've understood all the basics regarding law, what is law, why is law important, what is an act, how is an act made, let's now look at what are the different acts which we are going to study. So the first act which we are going to study is the Indian Contract Act 1872. The second act which we are going to study is the Sale of Goods Act 1930. The third act in your syllabus is the Indian Partnership Act 1932. The fourth one is the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008. And then finally we are going to study the Companies Act 2013. Now carefully look at all these 5 names. If you look at all these 5 names carefully, you might notice that there are capital alphabets which have been used in the name of the act. For instance, for the Indian Contract Act, T is capital, I is capital, C is capital, A is capital. In the Sale of Goods Act again, T, S, O, G, A, all these alphabets are in caps. Now, why do you think these have been written in caps? We could have used a lowercase as well to write the name of these acts, but we've used capital alphabets. So, why do you think capital alphabets have been used? So, basically, whenever we refer to an act, we are referring to a statute, and whenever you are writing the name of an act, the first alphabet has to be a capital alphabet. For instance, in the Indian Contract Act, T, I, C, A, all these alphabets have to be in caps, or even in a situation where you are using the word act. Now say you are writing an answer to a question which is there in your exam. Now when you write an answer and you are using the word act which refers to the statute. Say for example, you mention in your answer as per the act. Now here when you are using this word act, you are referring to a statute, which means whenever in your exam you are using this term act which refers to a statute, the alphabet A in this situation has to be a capital alphabet because you are referring to a particular statute. If you use a lowercase a, it will give a completely different meaning. The word act with a lowercase a will signify action of a particular person. But if you want to refer to a statute, the alphabet A has to be a capital alphabet. So whenever you are writing this word act from now on, only when you are referring to a statute, use a capital alphabet. But if you want to refer to an action, use a small alphabet. Understand, whenever you are referring to a particular act, at that time, wherever in your answer you write this word act, the A has to be capital, where act refers to a statute. Statute is nothing but an act which is made. So, please make sure that you remember whenever writing the name of the act as well, you have to write the first alphabet has to be a capital alphabet. It is similar to when you write your name. Whenever you write your name, the first alphabet of your name and the first alphabet of your surname are always in caps. Similarly, whenever you are writing name of an act, the first alphabet of the terms in the act has to be a capital letter. Now, this was with respect to the caps. Let's now understand what are the years which have been mentioned besides the act. So, if you look at the names of the act carefully, you might see Indian Contract Act 1872, Sale of Goods Act 1930, Partnership Act 1932, LLP Act or Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008, Companies Act 2013. So there are different years which have been mentioned here. Now what are these years and what do they signify? So these are the years when the act had come into existence. Like we know, when does the act come into existence? Act comes into existence when the president gives his assent to the act. Now, one question which would come to your mind is that, say the President has given his assent to the Act on 10th of August. Now, does that mean from 11th of August, all those rules and regulations will start to apply? Answer to this is no, not immediately. Once the President of India gives his assent, it is the Act which has come into existence. But after this, a notification is issued in the Official Gazette of India. Now, what is an Official Gazette? Official Gazette is nothing but an official newspaper or an official magazine where a notification comes up which states that this Act will be applicable from this date. So, whenever an Act is made, it is not applicable from the immediately next date. A notification will be published in the Official Gazette stating that from which date the Act will come into force. So, understand the date on which the Act is made and the date when the Act comes into force may be different. And talking about these years, these are the years when the Act come into existence, not when the Act come into force. Now, regarding these years, you will have to remember the years as it is. You cannot jumble this up. You cannot write Indian Contract Act 1930 and Sale of Goods Act 1872. Just like your birth year is important to you, similarly, these are the birth years of the Act. So, you will have to remember the birth years of the Act as well, and do not mess up with these years. You revise this 2-3 times and you will be easily able to remember that which year and which Act. So, these are the 5 topics which we are going to study in our paper 2 business laws. Let's now look at what are sections, subsections, clauses and subclauses. Now, here I have the Bear Companies Act with me. Bear Act is nothing but the original Act with all 8 sections. So, now if you look at this Companies Act, that they have given us the arrangement of sections, and like I've told you that an Act is divided into different chapters. So, chapter 1 here is the preliminary chapter which gives us details about the applicability of the Act and the definitions. So, if you look at section 1, gives us the details of the title of the Act, when it commenced, its application, and section 2, like I've told you, talks about the definition. Now, moving ahead, and if you look, there are different chapters and there are different sections. Now, here this is the beginning of the Companies Act 2013. There's a line in the beginning which says an act to consolidate and amend laws relating to companies. Now, this is called as the preamble of the Act. You might have heard about the preamble of the Constitution, which similarly, and every act has its preamble. And what is a preamble? Preamble basically defines the scope and objective of the act. So, the preamble of the Companies Act states an act to consolidate and amend laws relating to companies, which clearly tells us that this is something which will govern companies. Now, if you look at number 1 here, this is section 1. This number 1 represents section 1. And as soon as the heading of section 1 is complete, there is another number 1 in 2 brackets. Now, this is a subsection. So, here this is a section and this is a subsection. So, here again you see there are different subsections. There is subsection 1, subsection 2, subsection 3, subsection 4. Now, in subsection 4 there is an alphabet A in brackets. Now, this is a clause. Okay, so now you know what is a section, what is a subsection and what is a clause. And similarly, after this clause A, if there is another bracket with another number, Roman numeral, then that will be called as a subclause. Now, this was with respect to section, subsection and clause. Now, let's look at section 2 and there we'll look at the difference between a subsection and a clause. So here again, section 2 is definitions, and this section starts with a line which says, in this act, unless the context otherwise requires. So, which means if you compare this section with section 1 immediately started with a subsection with another number. There was no introducing the sentence, or there was nothing which was mentioned before subsection 1. But here, when you look at section 2 starts with a sentence, and after that here we have number 1. Now this number 1 will be a clause and not a subsection. So understand, if there is a section and it is followed by a subsection immediately without any line or without any introductory sentence, then that will be termed as a subsection. But if the section has certain introductory line or there is a sentence with which the section starts, then in that situation here this number 1 will not be a subsection, it will be a clause. Now let's look at another section and understand section, subsection, clauses and subclauses. Here we have section 4 of the Companies Act, in front of us. So this is a section. So this number 4 represents a section, and the section immediately starts with another number into brackets, which means here this number 1 is a subsection. Now after this number 1 there is an alphabet A into brackets. Now this is a clause. And if you look at the clauses in subsection 1, there are 4 clauses A, B, C, D, and in clause D there's further subclause. Now this is a subclause. So every act contains a set of sections which has different subsections, clauses and subclauses. And we also know that when a section directly starts with a number, when a section does not have any introductory sentence or any introductory line, then we'll call the number a subsection. But if there is a sentence with which the section starts and after that there is a number which comes up, then we'll call it a clause and not a subsection. So in section 2, because there was an introductory line, we said 2 clause 1. And here in section 4, it immediately starts with a number without any introductory line, and that is the reason we call number 1 here as a subsection. Let's now look at the paper pattern and the division of marks in different chapters. So like we've seen, we are going to study 5 topics in business laws: Contract Act, Sale of Goods Act, Partnership Act, LLP Act and Companies Act. Out of all these 5 acts, the major questions or the maximum number of questions will be asked from the Contract Act, and you will get questions between 15 to 20 marks from Contract Act. And then Sale of Goods Act is another 12 to 15 marks, Partnership Act 10 to 12 marks, LLP Act 5 marks and Companies Act 10 to 12 marks. So all your paper 2 section A, business laws, is of 60 marks, and this is the division of how many marks of questions may come from which topic. Now let's talk about what type of questions come in your examination. So there are 2 types of questions which come in your examination. One is the direct questions. Now direct questions is, they may ask you what is the definition of a particular term, or they may ask you rules regarding what is a contract, what are the essential elements of contract. Direct questions for which you will have to give direct answers. So direct questions which will directly ask you about the definitions or about a certain terms or about certain essential elements. So there may be direct questions, and the other type of questions which you will get is case study based questions. Now do not confuse between a case study and a case law. Case law, like we have understood, is a collection of past legal decisions. Those are the judgments which have already been made. Now, talking about what are case study based questions, case studies are basically situation based questions which will be given to you in the exam. They'll give you a situation, and on the basis of situation, you will have to give your answer. They may give you a question where they ask you that there are two people, they have entered into a contract, something happened, is this correct or not, is the contract a valid contract? So there may be different situation based questions which you will get. So those type of questions are called as case study based questions. So your paper will be divided into both direct questions as well as case study based questions. Let's now discuss how you're going to write answers in law and what are certain terms which you'll have to use, and regarding whether you have to quote the section number in your answer or not. So you may get direct questions or case study based questions in your exam. Now for direct questions, you will have to write a direct answer. But when you have a case study based question, you will first have to analyze what is the situation given in the question, and on the basis of the situation, you will have to give your answer. Now when a case study based question comes in exam, you will first have to write the provision which is related to the case study. You will have to mention the provision on the basis of which you are giving your answer. So that has to be mentioned, and after you have written the provision, write your conclusion on the basis of the case study. So for direct questions, you will have to give a direct answer, but for a case study based question, you will first have to write the provision, and on the basis of that, you will have to give your conclusion. And also, one important thing to be kept in mind when you are attempting your law paper, and that is there are certain legal terms which have to be used by you in your answer. It is okay if you are not able to replicate the exact section in your answer sheet, but the sentences which you are writing should convey the same meaning as that of the section. Now there's one doubt which most of the students have, and that is, do we have to quote section numbers in our answer sheet? So if you remember the correct section number, please quote the section number, but if you do not remember the section number, please do not quote a wrong section number. Quoting a correct section number will definitely improve the way you're presenting your paper, but quoting a wrong section number would cost you marks. So it is always better to write the section number only when you're 100% sure about the section number. But if you're not sure about the section numbers, please do not take any risk and do not quote a wrong section number in your answer sheet. And also, it is not mandatory for you to quote section numbers. If you remember the correct one, write it. If you do not remember, then you can simply write the provision and write your answer. So this is one confusion which is there in mind of every student. So understand, if you know the correct one, please write. If you do not know, please refrain from writing any wrong section number. So now that you know that section numbers are important, but only when you remember the correct one, write it, otherwise do not mention it. Now apart from it, we are going to look at different questions, both direct questions as well as case study based questions, and we will also see how we are going to write the answers to different questions. And apart from this, there are certain keywords which you will have to use in your answers, and these keywords we will highlight as and when we study a particular topic. So we'll highlight different keywords for different topics, and these keywords are the words which you will have to use when writing your answers. And it is very important to use keywords in your answer, because then you will not miss upon any important point in your answer. So we'll look at different questions all through our course and understand how to present answer for our subject law. And believe me that you will enjoy this whole journey of law, and by the end of the journey, you will definitely understand all the topics of law very clearly and also understand how we interpret law. And also, law is a subject which plays an important role not only for your foundation but also at your intermediate and final levels. So understand, when there is a subject which is there at all the three levels, it would have some significance. Only then there is a subject which is there at all the three levels of your course. So understand, it has some significance, and only then it is there at all the three levels of your course of chartered accountancy. Now when you become a chartered accountant, so when you're auditing, you will take help of different laws which are in existence and make sure that your client has maintained proper books of accounts. And similarly, when you're handling tax related matters, so there are laws for tax as well, income tax law, there are direct tax laws and indirect tax laws. So how are you going to apply them? And for them, you should know how to interpret law. So interpretation of law is going to play a very, very, very important role, and we are going to learn how to interpret law as well. We will study law in a manner where we relate law to practical life situations and understand how a law is applied. Now, one thing which you should keep in mind when studying any topic is 4 W's. One is, what is this act? Second is, why did this act come into picture? Third is, where is this act applicable? That is the applicability of the act. And fourth is, from when did the act come into force? So these 4 W's will play a very important role. One is what, why, where and when. Whenever you pick up an act and you're studying it, you should know that what does this act deal with? Why did this act come into existence? Where does this act apply? What are the places where this act apply? And finally, when did the act come into force? And why should we know when did the act come into force? Because that is the date from which we will start applying those rules and regulations which are mentioned in the act. So whenever we start with a new topic, we are going to first discuss what it is, why did it come into existence, where is it applicable, and when did it come into force. Now, talking about how many questions will come in your exam related to in your section A. So there will be total 6 questions. Out of these 6 questions, you will have to answer 5 questions. So your paper 2 is divided into 2 sections, section A and section B. Section A is business laws, and this section A will comprise of 6 questions, and out of these 6 questions you will have to answer 5 questions. And section B, that is business correspondence and reporting, is of 40 marks. It will have 5 questions, and out of those 5 questions you will have to answer 4. So for section A, 5 out of 6, and in section B, 4 out of 5 questions have to be answered. So out of all these 6 questions, question number 1 will be a compulsory question, which means you have to answer that question. But out of the remaining 5 questions, you will have to answer any 4. So altogether you have to answer 5 questions, but in these 5 questions, question number 1 is a compulsory question which you will have to answer. And apart from question number 1, out of the remaining 5 questions, you can answer any 4 questions. And also, whenever you are attempting an exam paper, you first have to make sure which are the questions which you are going to answer. So there is no question about question number 1. It has to be answered at any cost. But out of the remaining questions which you will have to make sure which questions you are comfortable with and which are the questions which you are going to answer. You will be given your question paper 15 minutes before the starting time of exam. So those 15 minutes have to be utilized carefully by you. In those 15 minutes, you are going to read the paper and you are going to decide which are the questions which you are going to answer. Those 15 minutes are very crucial 15 minutes, and now that law is a theory paper, it is not an MCQ paper anymore. It is a total theoretical paper, so you have to write answers and you will not get any MCQ type question in section A of your paper 2. Every question will be a theoretical question only. Could be a direct question or a case study based question. And before you start writing the answers, make sure that you are certain with what are the questions you're going to answer. So these are some of the things which you have to keep in mind when you're writing your answers. So we are first going to start with the Indian Contract Act 1872 and then go to the other acts of your syllabus. Indian Contract Act is the most important topic, I would say, because it is a topic which is asked for maximum number of marks in your examination, and also it will form a base for the other acts which we are going to study. And trust me, Indian Contract Act is also the easiest topic which we are going to study. Yes, it is the largest one as well, but it will be the easiest topic as well as the most enjoyable topic which we are going to study. We now know what is law. So what is law? Law is a set of rules and regulations. Why is law important? Law is important in order to maintain discipline in the society, in order to govern the behavior of people in the society. And how is it made? It is made by the lawmakers. How do they make it? They make a draft. This draft is called as a bill. This bill is introduced in the Houses of Parliament. When both the Houses of Parliament pass this bill goes to the President of India. Once President of India gives his assent to the bill, it becomes an act. And it is not that the act will come into force from the immediately next date. The act will come into force. A notification will come in the official gazette which will prescribe the date from which the act will be made applicable. And from that date, the sections of the act will be applied. We have also seen what is an act, what are Act comprises of sections, subsections, clauses and subclauses. And when we use this term law, law is a much wider term than the term act. Law consists of not only act but also the rules and case laws. What are case laws? Case laws are nothing but collection of legal decisions which have been made in the past. And the notation of case law is always plaintiff versus defendant. Plaintiff is the person who has filed the case and defendant is the person on whom the case was filed. These are some basic things which you have to keep in mind when you are studying law. Now, if anyone asks you what is law, if anyone asks you what is law and how an act is made, you will be able to tell them that what is law, why is it important, and also how an act is made. So for every problem, the lawmakers have come up with a solution in the form of law. And also these laws which are in place, they help in reduction of fraud. Not only reduction of the fraud, they also help in monitoring people who are indulging in fraudulent activities and punishing them. So there are different frauds you might have heard about. You might have heard about the Harshad Mehta scam and Satyam scam and many different scams which have happened. And people who were involved in these scams were also punished. Now, how were these people punished or why were these people punished? They were punished because they violated the rules and regulations. They violated law. And we all know that on violation of law, there are consequences which have to be borne. And these consequences could be in the form of fines or penalties. So these are some basic things which we've discussed about law. So we are going to study 5 topics in business laws: the Indian Contract Act 1872, the Sale of Goods Act 1930, the Indian Partnership Act 1932, the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008, and the Companies Act 2013. And also one very important thing is, do not mug up law. Law is not a subject which you can mug up or memorize. Understand what are the different things we are discussing, understand the different sections we are discussing, understand the purpose with which it was made, and then it will become very easy for you. So whenever you are learning a new subject, do not try and memorize it or do not try and memorize it, rather understand it conceptually. There are different concepts which we are going to study. So what you have to do is you have to understand the concept and not memorize the concept. Yes, for section numbers, you will have to remember the section numbers, but for different provisions which we are going to study, you do not have to memorize all the sections. Rather, you will have to understand what a particular section wants to say. And how will we understand what a section wants to say? We will have to interpret what the section wants to say. And it will help us in understanding the topic even better. And memorizing things will take you nowhere. So please focus on the concept and understand everything conceptually. Now that we are done with the introduction of the subject, it's time to dive into the subject and understand the ocean of law. So we will now start with the Indian Contract Act 1872. But before we start the Indian Contract Act, remember the 4 keywords: what, why, where and when.